Stand by. The vacuum tubes are warming up. This is a special live broadcast right here on Georgia Radio.
Well, we got a barn burner today. I'm telling you, this is one you're going to remember. We're continuing our conversation with local authors across Georgia, and this fella, he was a zookeeper for over 40 years, managed parks and all kind of stuff, and then he landed, as he says, an unlikely job for an animal lover. He became a part-time mule wagon driver down in South Georgia. Here to tell us this big yarn is none other than Doug Porter. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. It's good to be with you.
A mule driver on a quail hunting plantation. I've been down there, Pebble Hill and all those places. Beautiful South Georgia resorts that were once, really, before they opened Florida. It sounds funny to say, but the train didn't go down there. This was really the place to be for the elite to go hunting, and you were a part of that tradition as a mule wagon driver for a bunch of hunters.
Yes, I was.
And now you're writing books about all of this fun stuff that you've seen over the years. Your most recent book, Roaming, Rambling, and Reminiscing, Musings from a South Georgia Mule Wagon. Let's hear a little bit about this. How'd you get started in all this?
Well, that came about because of driving the mule wagon. It's such an interesting job, having a ringside seat to these rich and famous people who are in the South Georgia woods. And people need to understand that nowadays, hunters, quail hunters tend to use Jeeps and four-wheelers and zipping around the backwoods of South Georgia. Well, people that have enough money can afford to have mules and a mule wagon and horseback and, genteel picnics out in the woods in the afternoon. And so that's kind of what we were doing there. Not everybody hunts like this, but if you got enough money, you can do that. And so I was very fortunate to get a job driving the mule wagon, and I contributed a couple of articles to the Albany Herald about that. Always being careful not to name names, but people like to know what was going on out there. They weren't invited, and I kind of gave them a little glimpse into that. And the Herald loved it, and the people loved it, so I kept writing articles. I ended up writing about 60 or so articles over the years on a wide range of subjects, not just the mule wagon. But that's where the book came from. It's a collection of about 45 of those different articles, the best ones, I think. I had an editor go through it and threw some of them out. And
it's always the case.
Nothing like an editor to help you be humble.
Yeah.
But anyway, it turned out it's kind of a nice look at life in the South, everything from dogs and hunting to some of my growing up and a little bit of my family life and things that I think about and believe in. So,
well, you have a couple of works of fiction. We'll start off The Menagerie, A Zoo Story, The Dog Catcher, and The Fox. And then a little bit later on, you wrote a nonfiction book, Lessons from the Zoo, 10 Animals That Changed My Life. And I'm guessing this is all sort of real-world experience from your life as a zookeeper.
Yeah, Lessons from the Zoo was... it tended to be just a collection of stories, but what it really boils down to is kind of my memoir, as close as I'm going to come to writing a memoir. I didn't want to write a traditional memoir of when I was born and where I went to high school. So it's a collection of stories. Like lesson one it deals with elephants and some of my elephant stories. And every chapter has a different animal focus: snakes, birds. And it is a collection of stories from my time in the zoo business.
And then your next book that you're writing, if I understood this correct, is sort of how these animals played a role in the early days as a working partner.
Yeah. Well, what happened with my novels is that when I worked at the Toledo Zoo, I was a deputy director at the Toledo Zoo in the 1990s, and we celebrated our centennial anniversary. And we commissioned somebody to write the book on the Toledo Zoo, history of the Toledo Zoo. And when I saw that, I realized there are a lot of pretty cool stories that wouldn't make the book for various reasons. And I thought it'd be better just to write a novel about it. Then you could tell the real story of a fictional zoo. So I wrote about the zoo animals and our relationship with them. And I thought there are a couple of things missing. I wanted to write about domestic animals that live in our houses with us, dogs particularly. So that's where the dog catcher and the fox came in. And the one I'm working on now is kind of the third part of the trilogy, and it deals with animals that work for us and work with us, horses and mules and elephants. So that's the novel I'm working on right now. It's tentatively titled The Mule Skinner and the Fox, The Mule Skinner and the King. And it's set in Atlanta, 1930s, and it's circus-based, but Martin Luther King's in it, and I'm enjoying getting into that.
That's the great thing about fiction, right? I mean, you can do whatever you want with it, and there's a lot of stuff that comes from that. You're a writer. You were not always a writer, though, as you said, at least professionally. And I'm guessing the Atlanta Writers Club. We've been talking a lot about them as we highlight Georgia authors. This is a statewide club. It really is. I mean, it could almost be called the Georgia Writers Club because it is so big and so far-reaching. Talk to me about what that organization has meant to you over the years.
Well, I started out, did most of my writing in South Georgia, in Albany. And we didn't, I mean, technically I could have joined the Atlanta Writers Club, but I really didn't know much about it. When I moved to Atlanta a couple of years ago, and I was, trying to get involved in the community, so I joined the Atlanta Writers Club, and I was kind of astounded at all of the resources that I'd been missing out on all these years. I get involved in critique groups that'll read my work. I'll read their work and they'll read mine, and we'll banter around, things that we like and don't like about each other's writing. The seminars they have up in Dunwoody are remarkable. Every month we have seminars with various presenters, and then a couple of times a year they'll have a huge conference out near the airport. One was for self-publishing conference, and then another one is a more traditional publishing. But it's a tremendous resource for writers, and it's meant so much to me. I can't even tell you.
Well, I love the fact that you've had these fantastic experiences with animals, both in the zoo and in the wild, and you've been able to write about them. Is there anything else that's sort of on the back burner that you're thinking you'd just like to try? I'm thinking back to some authors and that have, there's one in particular that always wanted to write a science fiction book. He was a Western author, always dreamed of writing a science fiction story. You as an animal lover and author, what's that itch that you're maybe thinking about scratching?
Well, there is one, and my wife, is encouraging me. I'm kind of skeptical of whether I want to take this on, but I like to read some of the authors that write about historical things in an almost fictional way. I just read The Wager about about a shipwreck and how the people survived, and Eric Larson's book, Devil in the White City. I would like to write the definitive book about the history of the American zoo. So that's my back burner thing that I don't want to start thinking too much about, but it's rattling around in my brain right now as a kind of one of those books that would look at the history of the zoo in North America from the 1800s up until today, and how they've changed over the years.
Yeah, I would imagine that would draw the attention of a lot of folks, a book like that, because you're right. I don't think there has been one published on it.
Right,
at that level.
There hasn't. Yeah. And it's changed so much in my career, my lifetime. 50 years ago when I got into the zoo business, it was so much different than zoos are now. They were like prisons for animals, and now they're wildlife sanctuaries. So the changes that have happened in my lifetime have been remarkable, and I'd love to document that in some way. But
great stuff.
I don't know.
Former
we'll see.
Deputy director there at the Toledo Zoo. That's pretty close to where Jack Hanna was. Did you guys have any interactions?
Yeah, Yeah, we saw Jack a lot. He was at the Columbus Zoo, which
Sure.
is just down the road. So, yeah, I'm not a name dropper. I didn't know Jack. We didn't go out for drinks together, but I've attended plenty of meetings with him, and I knew him, and he knew me a little bit. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's
The other
funny,
person I got to know in South Georgia was Jim Fowler.
Okay.
He was from Albany. He was the Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom
Oh, yeah.
guy that they sent in to wrestle the anacondas. He was from South Georgia, so I got to know him pretty well too.
Well, so many great characters, and it's funny that so many folks think of their local zookeeper, their local wildlife guy, whether it was Okefenokee Joe down in South Georgia, or so many of these folks that have gone on as wildlife educators. They think of them as family friends almost, and it's
Right.
It's really neat to share that experience, and I think your book is on the right track. Roaming, Rambling, and Reminiscing, Musings from a South Georgia Mule Wagon is available right now, as well as all of the other books that Doug has written. How can folks find you?
Well, my website is jdporterbooks.com. My books are on Amazon and at Ingram Books. I'm self-published author, so you won't find me in your local bookstore or your library, but I'm out there, and I'd be happy to have people contact me through my website if they'd like more information.
I think that's great. Well, you're a respectable gentleman there, not name dropping all those famous people that you hauled around on the wagons, and I'm sure there were quite a few over the years. Because
there were some names that your listeners would recognize.
Well, you go down there and you tour these hunting preserves. Really, what they are. Pebble Hill comes to mind because it's open to the public, and you can go down there and really see it. They're unbelievable places that would rival anything up in Rhode Island or along the eastern seaboard. These hunting preserves are just magnificent, and I don't think I really don't. I don't think a lot of people realize they're still there and they're still operational, and in so many respects. So, yeah, around Thomasville, specifically there.
Yeah, between Albany and then south towards Thomasville and a little bit into North Florida there, above Tallahassee, there are some remarkable properties. They've been preserved for quail hunting. But the quail hunters learned many years ago that they had to burn their properties back when burning wasn't cool, and they've saved habitat all over the southeastern United States that way.
Yeah, well, it's a grand place to go and see, and I'm looking forward. I got to find your book there and take a look at it, because I'm sure there's some great stories. And is it thinly veiled to where you're going to have lots of fun guessing who these people were?
No, it's not. It's
okay.
not set up like that.
Okay.
So,
Right.
I'm not going to name who the senators were that I took around.
But if they would like to make sure you don't, send your money to jdporterbooks.com.
You betcha.
There you go. All right. Hey, thanks for coming on. This was a great story, and I know a lot of folks are going to really enjoy finding out more about your books and everything at jdporterbooks.com. Doug, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate the talk.
All right. Real pleasure. We hope to have you back when you finish this next one.
Yeah, I'll be glad to come back and talk about that.
You can find Doug Porter's books there at jdporterbooks.com. We'll be right back.
Georgia Radio, on your phone, in your home, everywhere you go.